Well, Daniel Ricciardo is also going to be racing in his home country as well. First time since 2022, obviously, because he wasn't on the grid a season ago until, I don't know, past the halfway point. But he sounds, I think, pretty motivated to get back on track after what's been kind of a slow start with V-carb. A lot of pressure, Laz, on Daniel Ricciardo to perform in his home country after kind of a slow start for the team in its entirety.
I think there's a huge amount of Daniel Ricciardo. I think there's a huge amount of pressure on Daniel Ricciardo right now, and yeah, he's going to have to rise up to it because at the moment, even if you take away the mistakes and the unfortunate things that have happened in races, Yuki Tsunoda's looked like the faster of the two drivers, and this is a season where if Ricciardo wants to make that step up to Red Bull to potentially replace Sergio Perez, or who knows what might happen with Max Verstappen, but yeah, basically make that step to Red Bull, then he's got to perform. And at the moment, he's not really doing it. So we're two races in. There's a lot of time to go. But I feel like this is a race that I mean, he obviously loves it. It's his home race. But I remember when he used to, I think when he first made the move to Renault and also a little bit when he'd been at Red Bull, the amount of media that he had to do beforehand, the amount of sponsor obligations he had to do, just everything. He was getting pulled in every direction before the race. And it got to a point where he said, actually, I need to have a bit more time for myself. I need to be able to focus on
Exhausting.
this weekend because it is exhausting, Plus, obviously he's from here, but he doesn't live here, so he deals with the time change like everyone else. So hopefully his schedule away from the racetrack isn't too hectic going into this weekend, so he can get his head in the right place. I feel like there's still that potential inside Daniel Ricciardo to perform and rise to that pressure, but I feel like he does need to do it in the next few races to not have this narrative start to build that Tsunoda's the better of the two drivers or the faster of the two drivers, and therefore Ricciardo isn't the right man to move up to Red Bull. So yeah, now is the time at his home race to put an end to it. It's an interesting race in that I feel like a lot happens here a lot of the time, so a little bit of experience can go a long way, and he's got plenty of that. So yeah, hopefully he'll be able to draw on that, not get too distracted going into it, and get the result he needs to kickstart the season.
I want to talk. Do you have an?
Yeah, I was just going to add to all of that. I completely agree with what Laurence said. I think as well, the interesting thing that Ricardo's got now is in terms of, and I hate using the word excuses because I don't think he's never really been one who uses like excuses in the same way, but you have this whole narrative around Ricardo about him replacing Perez next year. And I think that has turned the screws up around everything with Ricardo. Last year, he could say, I came in late, etc., etc. I think that the fascinating thing is that if you look at social media over the past 2 weeks, the backlash against Ricardo from his fans has been huge. People saying you're washed up and all these things. And I think that more than anything, I think will be something that he's aware of and that will, that will play on his mind and stuff like that. And we've seen with Ricardo before, he can take stuff like that very, very personally. So I think Laurence is completely right. He needs to kind of stamp that out quickly, get back on the horse. What was the horse called he had in Austin? Maybe you can borrow that.
Horsey McHorseface, I think.
Horsey McHorseface, that was it. But yeah, I think it's a really fascinating situation because I think if you look at that RB team as well, a lot of people in the paddock, maybe fairly, think that team's been set up more in line with what he wanted. Obviously the deal that came in, there's a lot of the guys that work with him were involved in that deal, etc. So I think there's a lot of things there that you can kind of poke holes in with Ricardo. And I think as a podcast, we've always been big fans of his, and I think that it would be a shame if we saw another spiral like he had with McLaren because that was difficult to watch. But also like the whole point of this comeback that he had was kind of like, oh well, Ricardo's back now, and you thought the end point would be this like return to Red Bull. If he keeps having these weekends where he's completely outperformed by Tsunoda, I think we'll stop talking about that pretty quickly because I don't think Red Bull aren't going to hang around and be like, oh yeah, we'll take this guy now. It's not, they don't care about the story being great or not. If he's not performing, he won't get it. So, yeah, fascinating. So early in the season that we're already talking about kind of a crucial couple of races for him.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.